Bang! Neevesknives. I'm Jared, and this is the EMP EDC Thick Boy. Now, this was on pre-order. Now, the pre-orders are already filled up. They are done. However, there are going to be some available after the pre-orders are all filled up, right around mid-November. So if you missed out on the pre-order, you still have an opportunity to get one. Now, I'm not sure if they're going to do a second run. Most likely they will. They did that with the Nimble. And if you guys don't remember, this is the same company that did the Nimble. And they did a couple different runs of that. Now, this knife is a prototype. So, you know, I couldn't go too crazy with it. I couldn't do all the things I would have liked to have done with it. However, I still wanted to provide you guys with a little bit of, you know, the content I like to provide in using it and testing it, at least a little bit. So we will get into how it cuts the geometry and everything else. I did not get to sharpen it. Like I said, it's a prototype. It's not mine. So I did not sharpen it. However, I do think that would have benefited. And I put that into consideration. Don't get me wrong. I put that into consideration. Now, let's get into it. So this is it's an awesome little knife. I'll just say that. It's pretty cool. Now, I look at it as that. You know, this is a cool EDC knife. And that's what it is. That's what it's trying to be. And in that case, it knocked it out of the park. Now, one thing I really like is if you look at the grind. And, oh yeah, there's multiple different versions of this. So they have, depending on what you ordered or what's going to be available, this isn't the only option. They have different kinds of micarta, different stonewash finishes, satin. They have all different kinds. So if you look at this satin finish, I'll see if I can get it in the light just right. You can see how it kind of, it's like mixed matched, I guess I could say it, or it's like the primary grind right here. The primary grind is offset from the top flat area. And I think that looks so cool. How you can see how it's offset like that. And the one thing about this, because it does have a little bit of a robust geometry, but one of the beauties kind of is that the shoulder going into the flat area is very subtle. So it's almost like, and I'm not saying it is, but it kind of cuts similar to how a full flat would cut, because it doesn't have a big shoulder here. It's a very subtle change, to get to the flat area right up here. So it winds up cutting better than you would think with the geometry it has. Now, it's not a big knife. It is a small knife, more like a 3-finger knife back here. You know, I can get my pinky to wrap around still, so I can get 4 fingers down there. However, you got this very, very large finger choil, which is very reasonable and allows you to really get up nice and tight to that blade. Very comfortable in the hand. And because the back is so straight, from the spine all the way across right here, you can really get a lot of pressure. You can feel how it really locks in across your palm for push cuts and things like that. We are going to talk about the cutting here in just a second, but let's knock out the action really quick. This hole is a very generous hole, and you see it's a hole inside of a hole. So you have other areas besides just the hole. Like you could get right here at the bottom and, with your finger if you want to. Now with this one, this is a prototype, but it does have a very light detent. It is too light, like entirely way too light. But I imagine that will be addressed, so this is just a prototype. And it's still very easy to spidey flick. It's just there is no, it's like almost like there's no detent. But not a big deal, like I said. It's still very easy for me to deploy. And, there was times I would hold the detent just a little bit and test it out just to see what it would be like with a little bit of a stronger detent. And yeah, this thing would be so awesome with a little bit of a stronger detent. But the way it is, I mean, you can still, fidget with it. And the hole and the position of the hole in your hand when you grab it, it's very natural where it's at. So it feels really good to deploy. You never wonder where the hole is. It's always just right in that spot where your middle finger, at least in my hand, where my finger will land. And The thumb is the same way. So when I have it in my hand, my thumb, bam, it's just right there. Very easy to get to, very easy to deploy. And that's kind of cool because a lot of knives that have the reverse flicking option, it's usually better with one than the other, meaning either with the middle finger flick or it's better with the thumb. But in this case, it's good for both. Both are equally as good. So that's really nice. And even though there's not a reversible pocket clip, if you are left-handed, it'll still be very easy for you since this is a bolster lock. You know, you're covering up the lock bar right here, so you'll have a spot to put your thumb. Now, the lock bar access is very nice, very soft. And I talk about this sometimes on the channel, how it's nice when, how do I put this? Unlocking a knife, depending on how they finish this area, can really make a knife feel more high-end. You know, just how soft it is, how easy of access it is, and just everything about this little area. If it's pokey, if it's a very strong lock bar, if it's, you know, just all the different ways it can be. But when it's done a certain way, it makes the knife feel even more expensive maybe than it is, or more high-end. Or maybe it will just, make it feel as good a quality as the price is. And in this case, it definitely does. The lock bar access is really nice. It's nice and soft, nice and comfortable to unlock, enjoyable to unlock. And the detent is nice and early, so you don't have to worry about it being double clutching right here and fumbling around on the detent. And it is complete fall shut guillotine action, which is really nice. Now, I think it'll still be that way even with a stronger detent, so that is awesome. Very, very enjoyable action. The action is awesome, especially if it had a stronger detent. Now, going back into the ergos, now cutting with it. You don't have a lot of cutting length here. You know, maybe 2 inches cutting length. I mean, not that you guys are probably really worried about. You can see that it's not much. 2 1/4, about 2 1/4 inch cutting length. Now, that makes it to where, yes, you can slip out of a cut, or 2, you can get caught up in the choil because it is such a big choil. However, with me, I like to I just cover it, and then I basically funnel material from my finger, letting it like kind of graze against my finger into the cutting edge. So I use my finger as like a funnel into the edge, and it works great. Now, I understand that this is an EDC knife. This isn't trying to be a work knife. This isn't trying to be your all-day cutter or your recycling knife, or your fishing knife. It's not trying to be that. It's, I understand what it's trying to be, and it works great. So for like utility cuts and things like that, it works perfect. Opening things up, one, you have a good grip with it, so you can grip it in multiple different angles really nicely to go from like the top of a box to the side of a box, to doing a regular utility cut. Bam, right to slicing. Like it feels really good in the hand, and you can move it around to the cutting angles you need. Now, because of, like I said, with the geometry, the way it is with this flat grind that almost simulates a full flat, it passes through cardboard very, very nicely. Now, like I said, you do have the potential of slipping out sometimes, but once you get used to it, you can avoid that happening, and it works out great. So after you've cut with it a few times, you'll get the hang of it, and it's great. Now, passing through the materials, I understand that this thing would have increased its cutting performance had I reprofiled the edge. This is the factory edge. It's went through a couple hands. It could definitely be tuned up, but that would have increased the cutting potential. Now, even without that, it cut great. So I can only imagine how much better it would have cut after, reprofiling it and putting a good low angle on it, or, a nice, a brand new edge, basically. Now, behind the edge thickness, so it does have a pretty high angle sharpened on it. Now, it's like 15, 16, 17 thousandths behind the edge, right around 16 thousandths behind the edge. But once you lay back the angle, it will be slightly thicker. So, at the thinnest portion, I think I got about 15 thousandths, but after sharpening it, it will probably be about 16, 17 thousandths behind the edge, because you'll lay back the angle, you'll put a bigger bevel on there, and you'll have to measure it up a little bit higher. But directly behind the edge, right straight from the factory, is about 15 thousandths. But you can expect after, a good sharpening that will thicken up just a little bit, which is normal for a flat grind. And the geometry they put on it, did give it the potential to where it's not going to just rapidly thicken up after your first sharpening. You can see you will get a good sharpening out of it without barely thickening up, the first couple sharpenings. Fit and finish is done very well. Everything lines up really good. I really like the quality of the micarta, and everything's knocked down in a good way. The backspacer does protrude a little bit, but it's not really pokey or anything in the hand. I'm really glad that this is rounded off really nicely. So, when you do have it in your hand, it's not like, it's not annoying you back here or anything like that. But everything is knocked down really nicely, and it's nice and comfortable in the hand, nice and soft. The jimping is done very well. I should have mentioned that in the cutting. You really lock in with this jimping, and I really appreciate them going so far up the spine for you to really lock in, especially with this big of a choil. It's definitely well thought out where they place that jimping, because this is going to be a position you're in with this knife quite a bit. So that was definitely a good idea. And yeah, all the fit and finish is really good. I mean, obviously, it has a steel lock bar insert. The micarta acts as an over travel, so you're not gonna have to worry about unspringing the lock. And it might have an extra one in there too. I didn't look, but I think it does. Regardless, though, you're not gonna unspring the lock because of that. The stop pin is right here, decent sized stop pin for the weight of this particular blade. So that's really nice to see. I hate when I see little tiny stop pins for a heavy blade like this. And I'm not saying that this is a ridiculously heavy blade, but it, the stop pin works out for this blade. And, ceramic caged bearings, which is why this thing is so smooth. And also, the tolerances and everything else plays a part in that. The clip and carry, the clip works great in and out of the pocket, nice and smooth. It's not like a really big clip or like a really deep clip or anything like that, but it does work good. You do have a little bit to grab onto to pull in and out of your pocket, and it carries just fine. I mean, it does have a wide profile, but it's just the way the outline of this knife is. It's not like it's crazy thick, even though the name of it is the Thick Boy. It's not overly thick, which is cool. The clip works great, nice and smooth. You don't have to worry about this tearing up your pants or anything. The tension's really good, and I'm happy about that because I am so sick of clips that tear my pants up, and this one is not one of them, and it works out great. Now, when you're slipping in and out of the pocket, you might feel the jimping, on the side of your pants a little bit, but nothing. I shouldn't have even said it because it's not a big deal at all. Bad things. All right, some negative things. Now, let me just say, obviously, it's a prototype, so I couldn't test the steel. I couldn't sharpen the steel or anything like that, which is, a big part of my testing. However, Bestech does a pretty good job with their heat treat, so I doubt that the heat treat would be an issue or anything like that, but I didn't get to test the steel or anything like that, so I can't really speak on that. And this is a prototype, so the couple things I am gonna mention are gonna be dealt with most likely, but the only real bad thing is the detent. The detent is incredibly weak. I mean, it's almost non-existent, so that is something I'm positive they are going to address. So aside from that, I did mention the jimping in and out of the pocket, but that's something you will you'll adjust and deal with. So it's really not a functional issue or anything like that, but it is something you're going to have to adjust with. And then like with cutting, you're going to slip out of your cuts a little bit, but that's also another thing you're going to adjust to. Same thing like with the choil getting caught in things, you know, you can put your finger in the way and block it. So most of any of the issues I really have, you're going to get used to and adjust, you know, accordingly. But as for bad things on the knife, anything functional or anything like that, the only real thing is the detent. You know, everything else is done very, very nicely. Even like the little fine details, which I really like if you look at the stone washing on the spine, you can see the stone washing here. It matches the stone washing on the spine, and then on the sides it's satin. Like those little tiny fine details are really nice on this knife. And you know, functionally and all the parts and everything, there's no real negative or bad that I can really come up with. Man, the knife is awesome. It's very well done. It, you know, it feels good in the hand. It's definitely going to be a good cutter. You don't have a lot of cutting length for how much grip you have, but that's what makes it kind of cool, right? It's supposed to be a cool EDC, and it will fully function as a blade. You will be able to get good utility cuts done. If you need to do a push cut, you can. If you need to do a little bit of slicing, you can. And it's a very functional blade. I wouldn't put it in the category of a work knife or, you know, any type of hard use type of knife just because of that reason. However, I've seen many knives that are like that are considered work knives. You know, it's because this blade shape is a great working blade shape. You can get a lot of pressure down into that tip. It's like all your weight goes directly into that tip. So you can get a lot of pressure through that, you know, type of cut. And, you know, it does have the potential to be, you know, just a great all around EDC knife. And that's where I would, you know, put it. You know, if I was going to rate it for what it's for. I don't know where I'm going, but awesome knife, fully functional, and it is badass. It is definitely badass. Like I said, you guys will have the opportunities to get yourself one if you act quick when they drop. I'll say that because I guarantee you whatever's left is going to probably sell quick. So if you want one, better get to it quick when they drop and pay attention to, you know, when they're dropping. If you already pre-ordered one, well, you got a badass knife coming. And there you guys go. I love you guys. Peace.